Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Gurus, the podcast where we talk about any topic there is. Today, we're back with another philosophy episode, and we'll be covering the topics of Plato and Socrates and their ideas. Let's get started. So, just a quick thing. Plato had tons of ideas about self-interrogation and how we question the world around us. So, what is your thought on him thinking that we are constantly in a state of self-reflection and that is needed to progress in life?
I think self-reflection is important, and it's important in a lot of ways, but I think that for a lot of people now, it can be kind of scary. It can be kind of challenging to self-reflect. I feel like
So, what about, like, philosophy is all about self-questioning and whatnot. So, what about that part is sort of scary to people? Like, why is philosophy and self-interrogation, like, scary?
philosophy, asking yourself like these questions are very very closely related. I don't know. I feel like philosophy, at least for me, when I first heard of it, I took a philosophy class in high school. So before that time, I was always kind of anxious about philosophy, that it was too much thinking. I think a lot of people now, with technology and having access to so much media in general, it kind of gets rid of that thinking process.
Yeah.
You go online, you go on the internet, you can go on any website you want, and you can read info. That's not info that you think, it's info that was given to you. It's not info that you have to work to figure out. It's info that was just handed to you on a silver platter. And I think that when people are handed things like that, then it prevents them from kind of seeking other outlets for it, but also tapping into their mind and actually thinking, is this really what I think, or is this what the places that I'm reading it want me to think?
I see. And so Plato had this theory that we tap into our unconscious, and the reason that we're scared of tapping into our unconscious is because we don't know what's in our unconscious, and it's fearful for people to sort of explore what they don't know. Do you see that in your life? Do you see like how maybe it's tough for you to self-reflect sometimes and go deep into your thoughts and figure out the root cause of different things, or no?
Yeah, I think for me and for a lot of people, it's not that it's the fear of what you might learn. I feel like it's the fear of just not knowing where to start and being in an uncomfortable position. I think that, especially today, this was the same for me when, I was growing up. Maybe it's I changed in a good way in this way, but when I was little and when I was growing up, I was scared of being uncomfortable. Like, I wanted to stay in a comfort zone, and I'm sure like a lot of people do as well, where they don't want to really challenge themselves because they don't know how to, and they're scared of failure. And I think that questioning yourself, it's just a thing that I don't think people are aware that they can do, in my opinion. I think that questioning yourself can be hard because you don't know where to start, and when you kind of try and go into the unknown, it's really helpful to have like a guiding hand with you.
Completely.
And when you don't have that, it can be scary, it can be fearful. But at the same time, I don't think that people are scared of what they might find in the unconscious, because ultimately it's still a part of you, right? Your unconscious it's somewhere in you, and I feel that, at least for me, when I think of that, I find that exciting. There's something of me that I haven't explored yet, and it can have so much more info than I have now.
No, yeah, for sure. I definitely think that like starting to understand the principles of philosophy, understanding how these people think is super important, because it starts to get you to question your own life more than you already had. Like you said, you've been spoon-fed so much information with all this technology that you lack a lot of self-reflection that's honestly needed.
Right.
Right. People aren't aware of different things that are going on in their life. They don't find the root cause of it, and we've just been kind of programmed to think less, and that's a problem, right? We're just given everything, and it's not a good thing. And according to all these philosophers, thinking and education is the only way to keep on progressing yourself, like physically, mentally. All of these things are combined. They're all tied together. So I completely recovered from it. So moving on a little bit, what about Plato's? You know a little bit about Plato's.
Yeah, like I said, I took philosophy in high school,
Okay.
so I'm a little bit familiar.
So using Plato's cave analogy, and using the puppets and diving into your senses, and getting out of the cave and finally seeing that, do you find any avenues in your life where you're kind of searching deeper into the meaning of it, and then like how does that kind of reflect on your life?
I mean, I think that, when you're just growing up and as you mature, you find out a lot more about yourself than you expected to and that you thought you would.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you were a little kid, I'm sure you never imagined that you would have as much knowledge as you do now, just because you didn't know that was a possibility. I feel like, obviously, as you mature more, then your brain matures at the same time, and that unlocks so much more possibilities and avenues for you to grow. But I mean, the analogy of the cave, like you were talking about, it has to do with the subconscious and things like that, trying to like ask questions. I think it's really important, and I feel like there's still a lot for me to know. Like in my personal life, it's always kind of been kind of my attitude towards like others. When when I was little, I was really more of a kind of making sure that other people are good. And weirdly, as I kind of grew up, at least into my like early teenager years, I kind of changed a lot into more of like a kind of not like individualistic, but kind of more for myself. And
so what changes in your thinking cause you to do that? Because there's got to be you
Yeah.
got to start thinking, reflecting more on your own life. What
Yeah.
are some questions that have helped you get to that point? If there's anything specific, if there's
yeah,
not
just going through. It's not really any specific questions that I ask, but I feel like once you start to for my life, once I started to experience more things and I saw and got out to the world, and I was just kind of able to see that a lot of people can be, selfish. A lot of people can be kind of against what you think would be good morals, good morality. It kind of changes you to, at least for me, when I was younger, I saw the world in honestly in a worse light. And it's crazy to say that because I was so little, but with the things that I learned and some of the people that I had experiences with, it kind of dumbed down my view of what I thought the world should be. But what I was really getting to was now I'm kind of changing in a way. Being able, especially ever since I got to college, being able to really see so many other people with different thoughts, different ideas. Because back home, it was always kind of the same people, and I always had the same view of the world, just because I was always exposed to the same ideas, the same thoughts. Especially going to college, being around so many other people has really helped me kind of change my view on how I see others. So it's never really been. I consider myself kind of I like to observe. I like to see what other people are doing around me, and like I said in my past, that would be a bad thing because I didn't appreciate the quality of the people around me. But as soon as I got to college, kind of everything changed where I met so many great people, and just being that observing kind of person has kind of helped me shift my view in that way.
I see.
Yeah.
God damn. So, wait, do you have any questions for me? Before we move on to...
No, you can go ahead. You can go ahead. I'll ask you some questions.
Okay. So Socrates says that we have. Hold on. Wait, I don't know if this is. I think it's Socrates. Socrates says that we already have like the unconscious, but we've forgotten it.
Yeah.
And so the process of questioning it is the process of remembering. Do you agree or do you not agree with this? Like, can you see how this would be a relevant factor in our life?
Kind of. At least like with how I was like brought up learning things,
Mm-hmm.
like it seems kind of irrational.
Yeah.
If you kind of look at it on the surface level, like,
Yeah.
oh, what do you mean? Like you're born with like your unconscious that knows everything, and then you like every day that you ask more questions, you learn more about it.
Yeah.
Like it seems kind of crazy when you first think about it, but
Yeah.
the more that you do think about it, like I feel like it holds some truth.
Is it providing value in our lives? Like, if you knew that, would it provide any value to you right now?
I mean, it kind of provides value to me. Like, I like to ask questions. Like, I like to learn more about other things, other people, the reasoning, the rationale for why things are being done in the way that they're being done. And when I was thinking about the question, it was like, yeah, I mean, you answer questions, you learn knowledge, but at the same time, like, what if that knowledge was already there? Like, it's
Yeah.
possible. It could be that you're learning new knowledge, but at the end of the day, it was
What
knowledge.
is new knowledge though? Because at the like if it's
If it's
considered
already
new, but you're learning it, that means it must have already been there in the first
Right.
place.
I'm talking more about new knowledge in a way that if you wouldn't have thought about having this unconscious that knows everything.
Okay.
Because originally, if you never had this idea that, oh, there is this unconscious that knows everything, new knowledge would seem like it was the only possibility. You know, there wouldn't be any other like avenues for where you can take like learning into.
Mhm.
But now that you have that kind of other possibility, then it kind of opens your eyes to a whole like different realm of things that, you know, of knowledge that you maybe haven't discovered yet.
So are you talking purely personal knowledge? Because what if the knowledge that you're that you perceive as new is just not new?
Well, I feel like it's even if it's not new,
It's new to you?
It's new it's new to me. And even though, like, say if I already had this knowledge, you know, there's a reason why I don't have it now.
I see.
I feel like, you know, something needs to happen in order to bridge the knowledge that you used to have to the knowledge that it feels like you just got.
It's by asking questions.
Exactly. Asking questions, you know, being curious. That's why. Why do you think so many people don't like what we were talking about earlier, like stepping out of their comfort zone? They're learning so much more, and I feel like if you think about it, like when we were born, like we didn't know the boundaries that kind of surround us.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when we were a little kid, almost all little kids are very, you know, they're very curious. They're very inquisitive. You know, they like to see things. They like to touch things. They like to move around and do things that maybe when they didn't have like these bounds that are honestly, I feel like, set a little bit by society, they were just kind of around.
Yeah.
They were able to be themselves.
Oh, yeah.
That's when you're the most curious, right? That's when you want to unlock the most things about you. But I feel like, yeah, when you're a baby, you don't know a lot of things. Like, you have to learn how to walk, you have to learn how to speak, you have to learn how to, you know, think. But I feel like that's only such a small part of the things that you can learn in general, right? Like, now I feel like there's still so much more that I can learn. And even like people can say, oh yeah, like, of course, like when you're born, like you don't know anything. But even the things that I've learned from when I was born until now, is just a small part of the whole, like, the whole amount of knowledge.
The whole pool of knowledge.
Yeah, the
that's
whole
out
pool
there
of
in the
knowledge
world.
that's available in the world. And I think, honestly, like, there's so many bounds that make us restricted from being curious and asking questions, because at the end of the day, it reveals more about us that we didn't know, and I feel like people can be kind of put off by that.
Why do you think? Do you think that it's a present society type of problem, or do you think that it's been a problem and we're just discovering it, or where? Because these problems, I feel like, have not always been there. I feel like we've only recently been restricted from gaining this type of knowledge. At the same time, it's kind of a sorry, it's kind of a what's that word when two things are contradicting?
Two words are contradicting. You could just say I mean, like two opposing.
Yeah, they're two
views.
opposing views, but they both. It's not a predicament. It's a paradox. Oh no, paradox.
Paradox.
Okay, I don't know if this is a paradox, but the fact that we're gaining more knowledge through new sources of information, like the news. We get the news daily. We get people telling us the news through like different social media that they use. There's constant new information coming in, but at the same time, it feels like we're learning less.
Right.
Because of whatever certain society norms or whatever. What do you think about that? Do you think it's certain rules that are imposed on us now that we didn't have before? Do you think that we've just gotten softer as a society? Like, what are some
I mean, it's definitely, I guess you could say it's like a double-edged sword. I mean, you obviously, when you have access to so much more information, like say through technology, it does overall, like, you know, I love technology. I feel like it's made all of us more connected, you know, in learning and knowledge in general. But at the same time, like I said earlier, when you have that knowledge that's kind of available to you, it makes you kind of think less. It makes you kind of less kind of, it makes you question yourself less.
What do you think that's doing to society?
I think people are just a lot more shallow now. I don't think they have a lot of kind of like they don't do a lot of introspection, so it's hard to.
It feels like everybody's almost the same.
Kind of.
They reflect the same ideas that they see all over.
Yeah, like they don't have a lot of they don't do a lot of introspection, so they don't know a lot about themselves, and what that does is like they don't know how to bring their own unique kind of thoughts. I mean, obviously that's kind of broad. Like, you know, everyone like has little, you know,
their own thoughts,
their own thoughts and their own ideas. But for a lot of people, because they don't have that, like they don't know who they are like inside, at least slightly, just because the way that technology has kind of made us kind of more reliant on other people than ourselves. It's kind of made us less unique in a way.
Is that a problem?
I don't know. I mean, if you look at like statistics of the world and you look at like the literacy rates, and not even I'm talking about the world, but I'm talking about like, you know, like impoverished nations, like, you know, they've all gone up. Obviously that's good for society, and one of the main reasons for that is, you know, because of technology, because of, you know, the ways that technology has kind of brought us together. But at the same time, people feel less unique.
So it's more, I feel like you brought up a good point. Impoverished nations are starting to get more literacy rates. They have more information to go off of rather than just books. Like, we can't send them millions and millions of books,
right?
But they're able to access the internet and they can find all of these things for
right.
themselves. So it allows them to sort of bridge the gap. And now I feel like it feels like Western society has been slowing down
a little bit, and it's good and bad. Like, obviously, you know, we live here. I would want like my country to do well. You know, I want my country to, you know, be successful, because I don't know, like I'm kind of nationalistic a little bit. Like, you know, I'm proud of where I live, and I want the place where I'm from to be successful, because for me it's a sense of pride in a way. So yes, like as in the West, the USA, whatever other countries like it are slowing down. But at the same time, I feel like the fact that other countries are speeding up is better for the overall society. You know, you can't be selfish and, you know, only wanting what's best for you. Obviously, there's cases where that applies, but I feel like for cases like this, I think it's helped people be more alike, which is a good way, but they're also less unique, which is a bad way. So it's, like I said, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, but it definitely depends on who you ask. But that's kind of my take.
I see. Last topic.
Yeah.
So Aristotle, we're bringing a little bit of Aristotle in here.
Yeah.
Aristotle argued that the virtue and the good were found in concrete situations and were subject to continual progress. And he defined good as the balance between two extremes, seeking moderation. So, do you see a need for like, balance in our ethics today, and how does that apply to society?
I mean, it's, you know, life's a big game of like balancing like your priorities and, you know, challenging like what you need versus what you want. I think that, you know, balancing, you said ethics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely tough because, for one, I think that's really subjective. Ethics can, you know, vary wildly depending on who you ask and, you know, how you were brought up, the type of people that you were around. So I don't think there's a way to universally question like ethics. Like, obviously there's things that most people can agree are good and most things that people can agree are bad, but obviously I think it really depends on who you ask. But I guess for me, there's always, you know, there's always some situations where you're placed in a situation where there's two bad decisions, right? Maybe in that case, you know, what do you do? Do you go for...
You can't always find the balance.
Right,
when you can, you would try and do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, when I can, obviously, like, I try to make the ethical or the good ethical decision that I feel like lines up with, you know, what's generally accepted. But when there is situations of bad, you know, it can be a question on like how do you address it? Do you go for the lesser evil, you know, or do you, I don't know, like, there's a lot of different ways that you can address a question like that. For me, it's definitely tough because I don't like to put myself in those kind of situations. But at the end of the day, it does happen. My kind of thought process when I try to balance out things like that is what decision can I make that will hurt the least amount of people. So I'm more of like the lesser of two evils approach, just because I think that you should value the people around you, and you have to recognize that you're not alone in this world, and that, you know, there's not only people that, you know, care for you, there's also people that, you know, maybe dislike you, but at the end of the day, you're still in one, like, you know, you share a space with them, and you have to think about, like, you have to kind of carefully think about the actions that you do and how you kind of can approach them.
You're definitely an optimist. You sound like an optimist. That's good, though. I mean, that's more of like the ideas of Descartes and Hobbes. So that's for later. But okay, last thing I want to touch on actually.
Yeah.
I thought that was last, but this is the last. Do you think that the education has helped or gotten better or gotten worse for people who want to think individually? And what are some like examples of that? Because for me, I think that education has, especially with technology, has forced people to use less of their own brains and rely on other people's brains. It's the same for everything. We've been fed information, and now instead of translating it to other people and whatnot, we translate it to school. which causes us to obviously do less thinking. I feel like a lot of the times, especially for me, like it's easy to go and find the answers somewhere, right? It's the easy way out, and people tend to go for the path of least resistance.
Right.
And the path of least resistance in every single scenario for school is technology, especially so widespread. Everybody's got a computer, right? Everybody can go on Google. So just having that sense of technology behind you, even if you think you don't need it, it's just there. It's a subconscious thing. Like once you start struggling, you no longer want to think about it, so then you just go and look it up, right? So it just kind of brings a tough point for the schooling system. What are your thoughts on how the schooling
I mean,
system
I think that when you compare the levels of education that we have now to the level of education that people at Plato's time had, it's definitely a lot different.
It's different.
It's definitely a lot different, not just obviously in the quality of education, but also kind of in the like how popular it is, how common it is in society in general. I feel like back then, having an education was placed on like the highest pedestal because there would be no other ways, mainly, that you would be able to kind of like progress through society in like a common way, in a way that's kind of repeatable.
So now it's kind of
predictable.
it's sort of similar, but it's definitely way more widespread. I see what you're saying. Like people still need to climb through education to get to the places that they want to be. At the same time, everybody has access to it.
Yeah.
So what does that do for education?
Like I said, I feel like back then, especially when there wasn't a lot of knowledge in the world, which is why, it's like scarcity, supply and demand. When there's not a lot of something, people want it more. I think that you can really see that in today's society, because there is so much more information and it's so easily accessible, especially compared to how it used to be, 500 years ago, not even, a lot less. People kind of start to take things for granted. I think that when something is so common and prevalent, it kind of becomes second nature, and in that way you have to kind of think about it less, you have to worry about it less, and you have to seek it out less, right? If something is so common that it becomes a part of daily society, then it feels like it's just another kind of task, it's just another like objective that you have.
That's kind of what it is, though. Now it is.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But back then, especially during the time of a lot of these philosophers, having this education was not something that anyone could just get. So at least for me, when I realized that there's something that's hard to do, it makes me want it more, because it's a source of inspiration. It's a source of motivation. You use it to kind of gauge your progress and see where you are comparing to other people, and that's how it was back then. But now it feels like obviously it's good, like it's great that everyone has an education, like, or, a lot of people have so much more access to education, and people around the world are getting so much more. It's great, but at the same time, especially I'd say mostly even in the Western world, people like take it for granted, and I feel like they become kind of lesser than they should be, and then they have the potential to be.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for that. All right, we'll see you guys in the next episode.